Have you ever experienced the sweet flavor of ice cream followed by the painful cold sensation that comes after you take a bite? This is what is commonly called a brain freeze, and ice cream is the culprit. Today, I'd like to discuss with you the history of ice cream, which has actually been around for centuries. I'd also like to discuss how ice cream can be made in the home and how manufacturers produce it as well. Finally, I'll finish with how this brain freeze occurs. Ice cream began sometime in the 16th century, but it wasn't actually made available to the public until 1660, according to the International Dairy Foods Association. The idea of ice cream began 1,000 years before, when Marco Polo returned from Italy with a recipe that more closely resembled what we now call sherbet. But ice cream didn't actually come until later. It was first recorded in the United States in 1744, but it didn't actually become popular until the 1800s, and as a matter of fact, it was first manufactured in 1851 in Boston. To date, there are 1.6 billion gallons that have been produced in the United States, according to the International Dairy Foods Association. Now that we've discussed the history of ice cream, I'd like to walk you through the process of making it. Process number 1, which I like to call the simplistic way. In earlier times of making ice cream, and even in modern day science experiments for school, ice cream can be made with five simple ingredients: heavy cream, sugar, vanilla, ice, and rock salt. The heavy cream, sugar, and vanilla are combined and placed in a small plastic bag. That bag of mixture is then placed in a larger bag filled with ice and rock salt, which can be shaken for 10 to 15 minutes, and then ice cream is formed. Process number 2, the manufacturer's way. When ice cream is manufactured in bulk, it is actually produced very differently, and it is explained very well in an online article by Ed Grabanowski on science.howstuffworks.com. The process begins with mixing the ingredients: milk, sugar, eggs, artificial flavoring, and then taking that mixture and storing it in a 3,000 gallon vat, like this right here. So take 3,000 of these, and that would go in there. Then that blended mixture is pasteurized, which just means that it is heated to kill any harmful bacteria. Once it is pasteurized, it is then flavored and mixed in an ice cream maker. There are products such as ammonia that are used to cool the tubes that surround the ice cream as it's running through them. But the product doesn't actually touch the ice cream, it just cools around it. Once the product is mixed, the cool but still soft product is stored into large containers and then stored in temperatures below 0 degrees Fahrenheit so that it can be frozen. Once this mixture is frozen, it is then ready to be delivered to businesses. From business to body, let's discuss the painful reaction that occurs that our bodies can sometimes have to ice cream when we take a bite. Sometimes it is commonly called the brain freeze. By the way, the official terminology for brain freeze is sphenopalatine ganglioneuralgia, but that's considered a mouthful, so we just stick with brain freeze. And the depiction in cartoons of the brain getting blue and icy is actually inaccurate because, believe it or not, the brain doesn't actually freeze. It's actually the body's way of telling you to slow down when you're eating your ice cream. According to an article by Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center, there are 2 arteries that come together to form a juncture, and it is at this juncture that the brain freeze first occurs. You see, when ice cream is eaten, sometimes the body senses the temperature changing too rapidly. So to compensate, its arteries begin to dilate and contract, It's this dilation and contraction of the arteries that is actually the painful sensation that the brain perceives as pain. The brain can't actually feel pain, but the outer covering surrounding the brain, which is called the meninges, that is actually what feels the pain it can, and it is perceived as a very painful sensation. So what's the cure? Well, the most obvious cure would be to quit eating ice cream, but you don't have to do that. There are temporary reliefs as well. You can either drink something warm, or you can rub your tongue at the roof of your mouth like so. So to top things off, what would our world look like if we didn't have this treat that we craved on a hot summer's day? Well, history dates so far back, it would be hard to imagine a world without ice cream. Each flavor is uniquely made and packaged and then sent to your local store, eventually to be delivered to your stomachs. So sometimes, yes, it can have an uncomfortable effect on the brain, or technically the meninges, but just take your time and enjoy it and you'll be okay. To finish, I just have one more question for you, and that is, what's your flavor?